Alright, so today we are going to be building this FPV drone together. So this is going to be a 3.5-inch build that runs on the Walksnail system, has the most popular ELRS protocol, and you will be able to use both 4S and 6S battery, depends on how much performance you want. And most importantly, the goal of this build is to carry a full-size GoPro and still fly like a champ. Alright, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so let's actually start by looking at the parts that we will be using for this particular build. So for the frame that we will be using in this build is going to be the Flyfish RC V3.5 freestyle frame, and this is still going to be one of the budget-friendly frames that you can find on the market at the moment. Alright, so that's the frame. And for the flight controller, we will be using the Maps Space Series SZF7 Mini Space Stack. So this is going to be a 20x20 flight controller, so it's smaller than like a bigger regular size controller. Then this is going to fit like easily into like 3.5-inch or 3-inch like freestyle builds, no problem, or even smaller builds that you can still use this one. All right, so that's the flight controller. And for the ESC, still going to be Maps, because Maps is sponsoring the parts for this video. So this is going to be also a 20x20 stack, and this is a 45 amp ESC that is for basically 41 ESC. That's pretty standard right now for FPV. Okay, so these actually goes together. So you like basically the recommendation pairing is going to be the F7 pairing with this 45 amp ESC. So these are going to be going together. If you wanted to buy them, I think better purchase these together because they're just works together. All right, so same, since Maps is sponsoring this video for the parts, let's look at the motors that we will be using. So for this particular build, we will be using the Maps SZ2004, and this is going to be a 3000 kV motors, and basically trying to use it for 4S. You can see that this is a giant motor for like a really small drone in a sense. All right, so done talking with the powertrain system. For the VTX wise, basically the video system, we will be using the Walksnail Avatar HD Kit V2. So basically this is going to be a Walksnail build, and basically Walksnail is also providing this kit for us to complete this build, so thank you Walksnail. All right, so lastly, let's talk about the radio protocols. So same old, we're going to be using ELRS, but since I do not have any more new ELRS receiver on my table right now, so I'm utilizing an old receiver that I pulled off from a working quad. So this is going to be the Beta FPV 2.4 gigahertz, like basically nano ELRS receiver. So yeah, pretty standard. All right, so before we actually begin, I just wanted to briefly introduce like how the FC and the ESC works. So basically, most of the time when you buy directly from the original manufacturers, it's pretty easy that if they are like marketing the stacks together, most of the case, you're going to get directly with the plug-in cables that you can just basically use directly to plug in to the flight controller and also the ESC. So one thing that you probably wanted to ensure is that just make sure that your ground cable and your like power cable is at the correct location. That you can see that there's a plus and minus sign right here, so this is the right location. And then the next side should automatically just go into it. So when you're buying from the same manufacturer, it's just good thing that most likely these cables, you know that they are going to be aligned, that they're not going to be like reversing whatsoever. So basically this is how easy for you to connect the mini FC and also the ESC together. So basically it's just going to be like this. So yeah, ultra simple. All right, let's basically start by adding some gummies to this thing. All right, so to add the gummy to your ESC, you just have to squeeze this entire thing in, and basically I find it easier when you're using a tweezer. So all you have to do is kind of like just squeeze it like this and like start like pushing it in, and it's going to like stick right there. So yeah, all right, so I'm just basically going to show you one. I'm going to finish the rest off screen. So since this is basically the side that we want the board to facing up, right? So you can get to all the solder pads. So same drill, I think this one should go like this. Yeah, it's a lot easier when you're getting a tweezer. So if you wanted to buy this tweezer, actually this tweezer is the one I found on AliExpress, and it's only like $2 or like basically $5 for 2 or something like that. It was like really ultra cheap, and basically this is kind of like ceramic. It's not iron, it's not metal, so it's going to be very helpful when you're just trying to like go to like solder, because like it doesn't get hot. So very nice. And yeah, obviously these are going to break when you like drop it to the floor, but when it's cheap enough, I just don't care. I buy it a lot and I just like kind of like recycle them around. Right, so basically this is the effect that you want. So you can see that you're getting a little bit space between the middle and yeah, on the top. All right, I'm just going to finish this off screen so we can start the soldering of the power cable. So basically what we're going to be mounting should be like this. So you can see that the battery should be coming out from the back. And then for the flight controller, we want the direction to be facing like basically the side, right? Just so you can tell like which side this board is original oriented at, you just have to flip it over. You can see that there's going to be a little arrow right here. So this means that what you wanted to do is you're going to have to face it that side. So this is going to be the front. Makes sense because you can see that the ESC cable and the ESC cables are going to be right here. So just plug it like this and this, and yeah, you should be good to go. All right, so let's actually start the installation of the power cable. Okay, so same as always, we're always going to start the build by soldering the power lead to the ESC. So you can see that the one that came with the package was actually a XT60 cable, which we're not going to be using because I'm planning to run on XT30 batteries because this is going to be a relatively small build. I think this is a little bit too big. So what we have to do is I actually built myself a XT30 cable, and then I soldered the capacitor onto the leads itself, so you don't have to find a way to like hit the capacitor into the frame, especially it's such a small one. So if you wanted to know how to build this one, I'm just going to put a video down below. The link is going to be down below. You can just go check it out to see how to build it, but I'm not going to show it in this video. So basically once we have this, we're going to just start the soldering. Okay, so same drill. So plus to plus, minus to minus. So plus is going to be red, and minus is going to be black. Okay, so once you're done, this is basically somewhat of the outcome that you're going to achieve. So not the perfect soldering, but the goal is you're going to want the wires, basically the metal parts to be touching the pads directly. So the solder is just to kind of enclose it in there. Okay, so once we're done with this one, we can actually start by installing this to the frame. So to mount the stack onto this frame, you're going to require some screws. So these screws are going to be M2, 22 or 23. I don't remember the exact number, but you just have to find one that is long enough. So for me, I only can find 3 of them that is looking exactly the same. So I have one that's a little bit slightly longer. So probably you'll be using that one just to finish the build, and later on just try to fix it later. Okay, let's start. It's just right. Okay, so once you're done with that, you can basically mount the ESC on top just like this. So very simple right now. What you have to do is to just line it up, put it in like this. You can see that it's perfectly sitting right there, and yeah, the cable I think is just about the right length. Okay, so perfect. So you can basically run the battery from that side to this side, which I like. Okay, so the next step, we're actually going to be installing these motors. So you can see that basically this is going to be the motor that we're going to be using. This is the MAPS SZ2204. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how to connect one of the motors to one of the ESCs, and then later on we're going to finish the rest of the screen so you don't have to watch the entire scene. All right, let's do it. So basically this is how you secure the motor on one of the arms. The next step, we're actually going to be cutting these cables to length. So you can see that each 3 of these are going to be one ESC. So this is one ESC, this is one ESC, this is one ESC, this is one ESC. So each motor, basically you can solder the cables upside down, whatever you like. You're just probably going to have a little bit hassle when later on adjusting in Betaflight, but generally you just have to make sure you solder each motor onto one ESC. You don't want it to solder this cable like all over the place, then that's going to probably generate some problems because like it's not going to work. Okay, so to make it most simpler, you can see that the motor actually has the wires actually coming out in sequence, right? So 1, 2, 3. So you just have to make sure you solder it based on this sequence. So when we later on adjust in Betaflight, it's going to be a lot more easier. You can see that this is the one we wanted to go 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Next, we're actually going to be cutting this to length, so it's not like dangling around. We don't want cables that are just sticking out. You can always leave a little bit extra just in case, because like if you accidentally cut too short, you're gonna have to find a way to like hook it up, and that's gonna be very, very time consuming. Okay. Or you're gonna spend extra money on getting a raised wire, and soldering raised wire, it's not the most fun thing because it's just sometimes it's just not that easy. So leaving a little bit extra long, I generally think it's okay, but yeah, if you can, just cut it to the best length, so it's not dangling around. It's like more clean in the sense. Okay, so once you have cut out these wires, you can actually save these cables if you want in case you need them in the future, but since I have a bunch already, I'm not going to keep them. Okay, next you're going to strip the wires. That is done. Okay, next let's actually pre-tin the cables and also the ESC. Alright, so we're basically first going to start by putting some flux on top of the solder pads. So you probably just put some little on the wire so the solder can like stick a little bit better onto the pads. Okay, then I'm just going to start feeding the solder onto the pads. So same drill, put the iron on top of the pads to heat it up. Okay, so we have a few balls of solders, which is not bad. Okay, let's actually pre-tin these wires. So same drill, put it on top. And just mill the solder like that. Oops, too much. Okay, so the next step, I'm actually going to be just connecting these cables to the pads directly. The goal is the same. You're going to try your best to let the wire touching the pad itself, not just the solders. Okay, so we're done. Basically, let's check the work. It's not too bad. Okay, so this one probably we have to fix it a little bit. Yeah, but the rest of the two, this is the one you want. This one is kind of a little bit out there, but I'm just gonna fix it off screen so it's easier so I can see it. Otherwise, behind the camera, it's so hard to see if I actually got it or not. All right, so basically this is how you are. going to connect your like motors for like to ESC, and the rest of it going to be the same. You just have to spend time to do it. All right, I'm just going to complete the rest off screen, so it's just you don't have to watch it for the next 20 minutes.
A few moments later.
Okay, so once you have connect all 4 motors to the ESC, you should somewhat get like this kind of result. As for the cable wise, you just have to kind of like tuck it in like this just to make it like lining up properly. And later on, after we have finished the build, we can just use a zip tie to kind of tie it up so it doesn't dangle around. All right, so once we're done with the soldering for these 4, we're actually going to be connecting the flight controller now. So for connecting the flight controller, it's super easy. All you need is to just get this cable off from the original package that's coming from the stack. So to connect this, all you needed to do is just to make sure that you are aligning the black cable. So basically the black cable is always going to be our ground. Just align it with the ESC and just plug it in like that. Okay, so a very good thing about buying stacks from the same manufacturer is that you can always make sure that this cable, both sides are going to be representing the same thing. It's not going to be like this is ground, and later on when you go to the when you go to the flight controller from the mounted manufacturer, this become your ground, and that's something you don't want, because yeah, you might potentially fry your board. But anyway, so since like we're getting the same one, we can comfortably know that this cable is just going to work automatically like that. So you can see that ground, also ground right here. Okay, so once we're done with this, let me see. So you can see that the orientation, there's a little arrow, so that's the front. So we have to flip it over like this, and then we can basically mount it onto our stack. All right, the next step, we're actually going to be bringing out these little nuts so we can just temporarily secure this so it doesn't move around. We're just going to temporarily secure it, and it should be good. Okay, so the next step, we're actually going to be connecting the ELRS receiver. And since I do not have a new one, this is the old one I pulled from my working quad, and it was just, yeah, sitting on my bench. So I decided to use this, and this one is going to be the Beta FPV one. So I think I bought it from AliExpress for like $7, so super cheap. For the connection, it's still going to be the same. You can see that there is a ground here. So you're going to have to solder the ground to your flight controller. There's a 5 volt. You can solder the 5 volt to your flight controller, or you can also use the 4/5 volt pad that will allow you to power up the receiver using USB power. But either pad should be working, and there's also going to be a TX, and there's also going to be a RX. Just remember, the TX on the receiver has to always be reversed on the flight controller. So if you have a TX right here, the pad you wanted to solder on your flight controller has to be RX. So same goes to the RX. So this one RX right here, the one we have to solder, the pads we have to solder on the flight controller is going to be TX. So that's the basic connection of ELRS. Okay, so basically let's get the soldering start going. Okay, so since the Flightfish actually has a receiver like little holder down here, so what we will be doing is actually we are going to run the cables underneath this particular hole right here, and we're going to bring the cable up front, and then we can just kind of like tuck it in right here, so it's perfectly not in our way in anything. So okay, so basically you just have to do it like that. Okay, so the next step, we're actually looking at the pads that we will be using for this particular receiver. So you can see that the cable is right now here. So we're gonna need a T pad. So basically you can see that there's a T2, R2, 5 volt and ground. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna connect these 4 pads. All right, let's start by tinning this. Next, we're actually gonna be connecting the cables. Finally, okay, we're going to start by the ground cable. Next is going to be the hot 5 volt. So the yellow cables is actually going to be the T at our receiver, so it has to go to the R right here. And then the last cable is going to be the R, which has to go to the T. Okay, so we are done. Okay, let's actually check our work. So this one, probably want to fix it a little bit. Okay, that's better. Right, so basically that's going to be how to solder a ELRS receiver. And next, let's finish it up. Remove 1 screw, should be sufficient for us to like kind of fit it in. It's going to be just a snug fit. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's for the antenna. You can just tuck it in to the antenna holder right here. So this is the TPU that comes with the original build. So very, very thoughtful. That, yep. Okay, so basically that is mostly done. Okay, so basically now it goes to our last item. So it's going to be the Walksnail Avatar HD Kit 2. I think this is the 8GB one. But either way, I don't mind too much about like the onboard recording. Yeah. Okay, so let's just remove it from the package. You can see that one good part, super good part about Walknsail VTX is that they are just super thin compared to the Vistas. If you are the one person that is actually trying to invest into Walksnail system, there is one important cable you have to kind of keep not losing is this one. This is the one cable that you will need to use it to connect your Walksnail system, to flash it or whatsoever. So basically this cable plugs into the port right here. You can see that this is not a usual size cable, so just make sure that you actually keep this one. Just don't lose this one if you have the Walksnail system, otherwise you won't be able to flash your system to connect with your goggles. Okay, so this is the cable that basically connects the flight controller and also the board. Okay, so to connect the Walksnail system, we're actually going to be using this particular cable. So you can see that this particular plug is tailored for the O3 system. So basically you can see that it's a much bigger plug compared to this particular ones. Let's make it closer so you can see. Okay, so let's do a quick comparison. You can see that basically this is a lot smaller plug compared to this plug, but it is totally fine because if you read the layouts, it's all 10 volts ground T1 R1. So that's exactly the paths we need. So what we can do is later on, we're going to solder this other side to the Walksnail system, and then we are going to physically connect the cables in here so you can see that it actually fits. Okay, you can see that it's actually connecting like that. So yeah, just have to push it in and it's going to connect to the same as basically. All right, otherwise you can also solder it on if that's something you want to do. Okay, so to connect the Walksnail system, it's all going to be the same drill. You're going to pre-tin this pad. Okay, the first cable is going to be a ground cable, since the direction is right there. Whoops. Okay, next is going to be the hot. Okay, so same as the ELRS receiver, the RX and TX has to be reversed. So for this particular one, the RX at the TX at the board is going to be this white cable. So we have to solder it to the RX on the Walksnail system. So last cable is going to be the RX on our flight controller, and then so TX to the Walksnail board. Okay, so the connection is done. Okay, so once the cable has been soldered onto the basically the Walksnail system, we will be able to connect this board onto the frame. So before we actually mount it, let's just actually remove the top plate so we can get to the antenna later on and cannot screw it back in when we need to. So it's easier to do it that way. Okay, whoops. Change my mind. We should probably just put the antenna in first so it's easier to manage. Okay. So this is a really long antenna. So later on, if there is a chance, I probably will switch it to a shorter one because this is just way too long. So you will be able to just squeeze really hard and this thing should go in. Okay. Right, so our antenna has now been secured. Now let's actually try to squeeze it in. Okay, so for this particular frame, we're actually going to kind of tuck the camera in like that. Then kind of bend the antenna a little bit. Probably later on we should be, if I find a shorter one, I'm probably going to just kind of get a shorter one because this is just way too long. Wrong side. So this is the way we are going to mount it. Okay. Okay, next we're actually going to be securing the board finally. Okay, so once we're done, that is basically 99% complete. Okay, we're going to run this cable in here like this, and then we're just going to plug it in. We're just going to push in the cable into the slot, and then basically the connection is done.
Flashback.
Alright, so this is going to be Tim from the future. So if you wanted to use these plugs in order to plug in your Walksnail system or any digital system, or you wanted to use any of these 10-volt pads, you are required to solder these two pads together. So for some reason, after I plug in my Walksnail system, I powered it on. The first time it works, the second time, there's something wrong that just completely shuts off the 10-volt pad. So you are required to actually set this up. This is going to be the pit mode something. So I don't know why, but the maps website wasn't that clear, but I'm just telling you, in order to use these, you have to solder these pads, and you have to go into Betaflight, and you're going to go into the Most tab, you're going to scroll all the way down to User, and you're going to assign a channel to it. This is basically a kill switch, that on-off switch that will allow this power, 10-volt power, to be on and off. If you just don't want it to be shut off by any chance, you want it to pull the yellow bars completely, filling up the entire blanks, and that is going to prevent accidentally shut off of the VTX system. So something that I don't think the maps website was very clear, but if you wanted to use these 10-volt pads, you have to do this.
End of flashback.
Okay, so to mount the camera, you're actually going to be using the damping that is providing with the Flyfish kit. So make sure you get the ones that is a little bit thicker, because that's going to be better for this camera. Okay, so all we needed to do is just kind of dry fit it into here, and then just put the camera in. Okay, so to know like which direction should be facing up, there's a little arrow right here. So you can see that, yeah, just basically point the arrow up. So you want it to be your up like that. Okay, next we're just gonna just put the screw in here. This is good. Get another one to the other side. Okay, so basically 2 screws should be able to hold it, but if you wanted to add, you can add additional one here, but since like I don't want my camera angle to be so high just now, so I'm just gonna leave it as 1 for now. Okay, all right, the next step, finally we will be able to put our top plate back. Okay, so this is probably the most joyful part because of each build, because you know that the thing is done and you can just put back the frame and it can be flied. Of course you have to set it up first, but yeah, always love to put the top plate back. All right, I'm gonna speed ramp this so you don't have to see it. Yeah. Okay, so basically our build of the Flyfish 3.5 inch is good as done. So later on, we're just going to be setting it up in Betaflight. So after that, we'll start adding the props onto it. Okay, so before we head to our PC, there is one more thing that I want you to do, which is to bind your ELRS receiver to your ELRS radio. By doing it now, it will just allow us to be like more process everything more streamlined later on. So to bind the ELRS receiver, right now I'm just going to be showing you a cheat method of doing it, which is the quick method. But if you're interested of the binding phrase method, which is going to be a little bit more complicated, there is going to be a separate video links down below to show you how to set up binding phrase for both your quad and your radio. So that is going to be a more permanent and better way to bind your ELRS receiver. But right now we're just going to begin with the cheat method. So for the cheat method to work, the one thing important that you have to ensure is that both of your ELRS firmware requires to be matching. So I want you to make sure that both of your quad and your radio is going to have the ELRS firmware version on 3.x. So this one can be on 3.1 and this one can be on 3.2, but as long as it starts with the 3, they're going to bind together. All right, so we're just going to move the quad aside. We're going to bring the radio a little bit forward. At the radio side, I want you to go into the ELRS Lua script, and you're going to scroll everything down just to the bind button, and we are going to hold right here. So this is going to be the standard way of doing it for most of the ELRS receiver, as long as it's a serial base. Okay, so SPI base are going to be a little bit different. Okay, so at the receiver side, you are going to be powering up like this and plug in on the 4th, and this is going to be forcing the ELRS receiver into binding mode. And once you have this set up, you're just going to hit bind right here, and they should automatically bind together. You can see that, yeah, telemetry loss, so it's just going to be connecting back together because I already connect this together off screen. Once this has been completed, we will be able to move to our computer to finish the rest of the setups. All right, so for the next step, I want you to move your quad to your PC and you're going to plug it in with a USB-C cable. So what we're actually going to be doing right now is we're going to be setting up the flight controller. So the flight controller knows what we're doing where we're just adding our stick input. So right now it's just completely not set up yet. So this is something that you wanted to ensure to set up before you take off, otherwise it probably just won't fly ever. So before we actually begin the PC side, if you are making this exact build, like exact parts, but you just don't have time to watch the step-by-step video to do it, I'm going to leave a file down below for you to download so you can just flash it directly to your Betaflight and it's going to work as is. All right, let's actually start the step-by-step process. All right, so once the quad has been connected via USB, I want you to go to Betaflight and you're going to hit connect. And the first thing you wanted to do is just to make sure that if your orientation is correct. So you can see that if your arrow is facing forward, you know, the movement in the image should be the same when we're moving the quad. So once this is confirmed, you're going to go to the ports tab. So the ports tab is where we are going to be enabling stuff in order for us to let the flight controller know what was connected to it. So yep, currently there is going to be two stuff that we're connecting. One is going to be the ELRS Receiver and one is going to be the Walksnail VTX. So for the ELRS Receiver, since we're soldering it to TX2 and RX2, we're going to enable serial RX right here. And this is going to be the thing that it's going to be enabling the serial-based ELRS Receiver. So TX2, RX2, UR2. And you're going to hit save and reboot. All right, so we're just going to enable the ELRS all the way. So there's all the steps that you have to do. So the next step, you're going to go to the receiver tab. So at the receiver tab, you're going to make sure that the receiver mode is going to be set to serial. And you want to select crossfire for ELRS Receiver. And once you're done, hit save. All right, let's go back to ports tab. This time we are going to be enabling the VTX of the Walksnail. So if you're going to be using the plug, it's going to be TX2 and RX2. So which means the plug is going to be using UR1. So you have to enable MSP. So MSP right here, and you will be able to select MSP plus display port, and this is going to be the thing that you want. All right, since we're selecting OSD plus display port, you're going to go to the configuration tab. You're going to make sure OSD is enabled, so you will have OSD in your final footages, in your final like a PV video, and you're going to go to the OSD tab. You will be able to select the things that you want to be shown on like customizable OSD on your particular build. So one thing that is a little bit more important here is that you wanted to make sure that your video format is set to HD. So this will allow the OSD to be showing on your like your FPV goggle footage. So also do know that Walksnail system, not all of the OSD icon is going to work. So if it's not working, just yeah, it's fine, because there's only the certain like the general ones are going to work, but you can see that most of the stuff that we need, voltage, whatever modes that is in, these are going to be more important ones, and yep, they do work. And once you're done, hit save. All right, so once we enable our video system, the next step, we're going to be going into the motors tab. So at the motors tab, at this place, it is going to be very important. We wanted to make sure that our motor, the orientation, the numbers, everything is going to be setting up correctly. So in order to test this, you wanted to plug in a battery. So just pick up a 4S battery or a 6S, up to you, and plug it in right here. So once we have plugged this in, you can see that this is going to be the sequence that you want. So this motor, you want it to be 4, and this motor, you want it to be 1, and this motor, you want it to be 2, and this motor, you want it to be 3. So just make sure that it is going to be same. You don't want it to be different. The easiest way to find out what is what and to reset everything is just using the reorder motor function. So you're just going to click the reorder motor. Just click I understand the risk, make sure there's no propellers. So what we are going to be doing right now is we're just going to be clicking the motor that is actually spinning. So this one is spinning 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this widget is going to let us know which motor is actually the one. The flight controller is recognizing as 1 and 1 is 2. All right, so this widget is going to be very helpful because it will just allow us to like make sure everything is set up correctly. So once you're done, just hit save. All right, so once we have reconnected, I want you to go back to the motors tab again. And this time we wanted to make sure the motor is spinning to the correct orientation. So number 4 wants to spin this way. Number 2, you have to spin this way. So you have to be same as this footage. Okay, so to test it, you can just enable the motors like this and you will be able to test it. Let's actually test number 4 right now. So you just have to raise the bar and just kind of touch it to feel like how it's going. So yeah, it's going that way, so that is good. So number 2, it's going to be that way. Yep. And number 3, it's going to be the same thing. All right, so spinning the correct location. Yep, okay, just use your hands to touch it. It should be okay. As long as you're not spinning it too fast, at slow speed should be fine. All right, so once you have confirmed, you can just hit stop motor. And then in case that you are the one that your motor is just not spinning to the correct orientation, the direction is just not right, you can use the motor direction function to actually fix this problem. So you just have to click it. I understand the risk. You can run it individually. You can see that if we are going to run number 2, so currently it's going in there like this, but if you want it to be reversed, you can. So that is called normal. So you just have to click normal. You can see that right now the motor is actually spinning this direction. And if you want it to reverse, which is like on counterclockwise, going that way, you just have to hit reverse. And once you're done, just hit close and it's going to be reordered directly like that. Oh. All right, so once we're done with the motor tab, let's actually go to the power and battery. So for this particular flight controller board, the voltage is not very accurate. So you have to like manually calibrate it in order for it to be accurate. So what you're going to do is with the battery plug-in, just bring out like a voltage reader or something that you have, that we always have a lot on our desk. So you're going to plug in the battery on here. So you can see that this is going to be the voltage that is currently on. You're going to hit the calibration tool. So measure voltage, you're just going to put 4.0888. Okay, should be kind of like there. And you just have to apply calibration, and basically this board is now going to be calibrated. If you don't do this, you probably will just like, the board is just going to give you a lot of warnings saying that, oh, battery is running out, but in fact you still have a lot. After calibrating the voltage, next let's actually go to the presets tab. So the presets tab, because this quad currently has no tuning at all, it's just completely everything set to the middle. So we wanted to at least have something like a tuning slap onto it so it can at least kind of fly. So based on my test, I really like the Superfly Freestyle 3/4" one, and this one is actually pretty good for, I think it just makes the performance actually not bad. So you're just going to click this one, and of course you can just tune whatever you like, but if you're just not really savvy at tuning, then yeah, you can flash this on top of it. It's actually going to work pretty good. So the pits, we're just going to be adding with action camera, since my goal is to carry a GoPro, right? So yep, we're just going to put action camera, RPM filtering, and you will be able to just adjust like your freestyle rates, but since like I'm using my custom rates, I'm not going to touch. So once you have select the ones you want, you can just pick, and it's basically going to be flashing it. But since I already have everything done, I'm not going to do it again, but this is the button you have. Okay, so next let's actually go to the pit tune tab. So at the pit tune, after you flash the presets, all the tuning, you can see that all the parameters are going to be adjusted for you. And this is the magical thing about using presets. It's like you don't have to know a lot, and it should be at least to a flyable situation. Not going to be very perfect for your personalized stuff, but it's going to work. All right, so next let's actually talk about some of the rates. So rates is something also really personal, but in case you just wanted to know what my rates is, yeah, this is going to be the Betaflight rate that I use, and you can just copy it and just punch in it. So this rate is it's not going to be very snappy, it's not going to be very good for freestyle, it's just kind of okay. It's just kind of like mid, slower, that sort of type, smooth. It's kind of my thing. So yep, these are going to be the rates that I use. And once you're done, yeah, just hit. Once we are done with all of these, you can just remove the battery because we don't need it anymore, and it just unplug it just so we can also keep the Walksnail system to be kind of like not heated up. All right, so let's unplug this. And next we are going to be bringing out our radio just so we can test out the modes tab. This is going to be something we're going to set up. By unplugging it, we will be able to reset our ELRS receiver because it's kind of like in Wi-Fi mode ready. Next, you're going to power up your radio. Okay, we are going to just be plugging it in like this. All right, so we're going to go to the modes tab. So at the modes tab, so you can see that we already have some setting done already, but just in case, I'm just going to remove everything so we can set up it together. So the first thing you wanted to do with your quad is your radio needs to tell the quad to like spin the motors, right? So that's the thing that we call arm. So you're going to be adding the range right here. So you just add range. So we are going to be assigning one of the switches to the quad. So it knows like, hey, the switches, when you flip it, it's going to arm the quad. So you can just put this on auto and you just flip the switch you want. And you can see that this is going to be aux 1. So what we wanted to make sure is that the yellow dot falls into the yellow bars when we actually flip it. So you can see that I'll flip it goes in here. So right now it's arm. Also, just to mention that your aux channels, if you're just using the radios by default, you just got it from anywhere that, you know, just get it, open the box. The standard like sequence is going to be aux 1, aux 2, aux 3, aux 4. It's kind of like this. So you can just like try it out to see like which one you like better. And next we're going to set up, it's going to be the modes. So what flight modes do you want your quad to be? So there's going to be 3 standard flight modes. We're going to have angle, horizon, and acro. So angle is probably the ones that you wanted to use if you're just completely in the beginner stage, because this one, the quad is going to stabilize for you. It's not going to tip over. So yeah, probably a lot easier. So we're going to set it to auto and we're going to set it to the aux 2 switches. So yep, this one we generally just leave it as default. So on the all the way on the bottom. And next we're going to set up a horizon mode. It's kind of not necessary. In case you wanted to be able to like do flip and flops instead of just the quad is going to limit your tilt angle, you can set up to horizon mode. So what it does is that you will be able to just use your stick to roll and you flip whatever you like. But when you let go the sticks completely, the quad is just going to stabilize again for you. That's the difference about horizon mode. All right, so same drill, just going to flip the switch. We're going to set up in the middle so you can see that bottom, it's going to be angle, middle, horizon, and on top is going to be acro. All right, so these are going to be the 2 important switches that you needed to know in order to like, yeah, just these are the 2 switches that you need just to get off the air. So yep. All right, so we're done. Just hit. All right, so that basically concludes the setup of the Betaflight section. And next, we're just going to go back to the bench. We're going to add on propellers, and then we're just going to head to the field and we're going to test fly it. And as for how to bind VTX to the Walksnail, since this video is just too long already, I'm just going to add additional link down below so you can just go check it out. All right, so let's get. All right, so we are back to the bench, and since mounting props is going to be probably one of the easiest things that you can do here, we're just going to be quickly running through how you should be installing. So for the propellers, we're going to be using some Janfen 3630. So yeah, just a little bit big, but just right so it doesn't hit the frame. But yeah, we just want to use the biggest prop possible so we can get more lift. Right, so since this is going to be propped in, you wanted to make sure the higher side of the prop facing inside like this. So this one, higher side, goes in here. Right, dry fit. And this one has to be same as this one. So you're going to find the one that looks like that one, and you're going to put it right here. And same goes here. So props in. So higher side goes like this side. You're going to mount it like this. And this one like this one. And then, yep, we are done. All right, so this is going to be how you should be mounting the props. And next, let's just actually head to the field. We're going to test fly this. All right, so we're switching to the front yard, and since the goal for this build is just to carry a full-size GoPro, we are going to be attaching a GoPro 11 Mini onto it, which is about 133 grams. You can just see how big the GoPro is comparing to the quad. Let's just hope it actually carries well and flies well. Also, since this quad is built meant to take both 4S and 6S, we will start the test by using a Tattoo 4S 850 mAh Lipo. Alright, so this is going to be the flight test using the 4S Lipo, and the footage is going to be coming directly from the GoPro without any stabilization added. And I can say I'm quite surprised about the performance. It's actually not bad. Because the original thought was that 4S may not be able to lift up such a heavy GoPro, at least it's not going to be this easy. And you can see from the footage, it's actually performing okay. So when you're doing like regular cruising type of flights, hey, this kind of like feels like pretty agile. You're not going to feel that your motors is struggling whatsoever. If you can hear the sound, it's actually just performing like regular. Like my throttle like level, it's not all the way on the top, it's kind of like the 50%, so this is actually not bad. Also, since our original goal was just to have something that is able to perform simple cinematic type of flights without too much of a flip and flops, I can definitely say this is exceeding my expectation. So even if you're running on 4S, it's still giving a pretty good response when punching up, recovering yourself from maneuver. So you can still do some sort of freestyle tricks, no problem. But yeah, just kind of note that when you're just trying to recover, it's really heavy, so you might spot some prop wash during the process. So my conclusion for 4S, it's you're not going to get super aggressive raw power, but it is also not saggy, and I think 4S is still not bad because, yep, you'll be able to use larger lipos on this because it's going to be relatively smaller than 6S. So now let's actually swap to the 6S test. Alright, so for the 6S LiPo test, we will be using the CNHL Mini Star Series LiPo, and this is the smallest and cheapest 6S LiPo that I can find that also has a XT30 plug. Let's actually just plug it in and let's give it a go. Same old benchmark, this is going to be the GoPro footage without any stabilization added, and this time we are testing the 6S LiPo. So right away, you're going to hear that even the motor is going to sound much louder compared to 4S. So yeah, this is definitely something that you can even hear the power. After flying it, you can spot that you're actually getting a significant increase of performance. As you can see from the punch up, it is just shooting yourself to the moon without much throttle added. And there is going to be a significantly less prop wash when you're trying to recover from tricks. So I think 6S is definitely the way to go if you're looking for extra performance, but you probably will sacrifice a little bit of flight time. Because like this particular frame, yeah, it's a relatively small frame, and you won't be able to add a large 6S LiPo onto it because of the top. There's just not a lot of space there. You can see that even my camera has to be tilting a little bit forward in order to like put the 6S LiPo in there. So something that you wanted to consider. Also, just to kind of report after the fact, because yeah, we wanted to know if this motor is actually handle 6S okay. So after I landed, I tested, tried out the motor temperatures. It seems to be still pretty cool. So yep, I think running 6S on this build is going to be relatively safe. Next, let's actually just test out to see how it performs with no GoPro at all. All right, so the footage you're seeing right now is coming from the Walksnail Avatar HD camera and the onboard recording. And as this is an X-frame quad, you're going to see props in the frame, which is kind of as expected. The footage quality wise, I would say it's just okay. And I do think this is just meant for you to see in your goggles instead of just for you to post it in your social media or whatever, because it's just not really stunning. Consider we're kind of in the 03, 04 era that, you know, or Walksnail Moonlight. Yeah, that's going to be something that is a little bit more social media grade, better quality products. But this one, I would say it is just meant for like, if you just wanted to see and you're going to attach an action camera on top, this is good enough. So regarding the performance of the quad without an action camera added on top and running on 4S, I would say that this is actually super light and super agile, and maybe just a little bit too agile because it is just really flippy floppy, and it's kind of like light as a feather because the tuning was meant to have an action camera mounted on top. So if you're going to operate this without an action camera, I would say probably just adjust the tuning a little bit so you can just, you know, unselect the action camera option, so it probably will give you a better like flight experience with this. All right, so that's going to be about it for this super long video. And since our original goal was just for the quad to carry a GoPro, I do think that this is actually exceeding my expectation. So very, very good. So if you like what I'm doing and would like to support my work, please buy me a coffee or join my membership or just simply like and subscribe. All right, I'll see you in the next one, and bye for now and happy flying.